I stood behind the half-closed door, frozen. My husband's voice, clear as day, cut through the hallway. She's just useless. Hasn't done a real thing in years. Laughter followed. His sisters, his mother's. I should have stormed in, demanded answers. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at the wine glass in my hand until it slipped, shattering against the hardwood floor. No one heard it. They just kept talking, louder, as if I didn't exist. That was the night I stopped being a wife and started becoming something far more dangerous. I used to believe I was lucky. Lucky to have a husband like Ethan, stable, responsible, well-spoken. Lucky to be welcomed by his family, who always greeted me with warm smiles and polite questions about my day. I even felt lucky to have stepped away from my high-paced career in architecture, telling myself I needed the space, the peace, to build a home. Not just for myself, but for all of them. At first, everything felt picture perfect. Ethan would kiss me on the forehead every morning, whispering thank yous when I packed his lunch. His mother praised my home-cooked meals, calling them restaurant-worthy, and his sister would sometimes ask for recipes as if I were a domestic goddess. I spent hours arranging fresh flowers in vases, reorganizing cabinets they never used, lighting candles that burned down without anyone noticing. I told myself it was love. This invisible labor was love. But then I noticed small things. Ethan would correct the way I folded his shirts, even when they were crisp and neat. His mother would accidentally overwrite my grocery lists with her own, lists that somehow always favored her diet and her needs. His sister. She'd move my things around in the kitchen, then laugh, claiming I was forgetful. When I asked Ethan about it, he chuckled, "Babe, they're just being helpful. You're always so sensitive." So I adjusted. I told myself I was overthinking. I smiled more, spoke less, made myself smaller in every room I entered. I stopped bringing up ideas for renovating the guest room, even though the design lived rent-free in my head. I let them choose the dinner menus, let them take credit when neighbors complimented the house's decor. Decor I had curated from scratch. I convinced myself it was better this way. A quiet life, a grateful wife. Until that night, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I had just walked past the hallway, wine glass in hand, when I heard Ethan's voice. She's just useless. Hasn't done a real thing in years. Then laughter. His mother. His sister. That sharp, high-pitched laughter I had mistaken for joy. My feet froze. My hand trembled. The wine glass slipped, shattered. The sound echoed down the hallway. No one came. They just kept laughing, louder, bolder. I spent that night lying awake, eyes open to the ceiling, replaying every accident from the past 3 years. The time my presentation folder for a freelance job mysteriously disappeared, right after my mother-in-law offered to help clean my desk. The email from a New York firm that never made it to my inbox, only to be discovered in the trash folder weeks later. My sister-in-law had borrowed my laptop that morning. "Just checking my social media," she had said. I had believed her. For the first time, a thought wormed its way into my mind. What if they were never accidents? What if I wasn't forgetful or disorganized or overly emotional? What if they wanted me to think I was? A few days later, I got my answer. I came home from the market to find balloons on the gate, music blaring inside the house. Cars lined the street, guests in semi-formal clothes milled about the front porch with cocktails. Confused, I stepped inside. The smell of roasted lamb hit me before I saw the buffet laid out across my dining room table. My dining room, my house. Ethan stood near the fireplace, a glass in hand, laughing with a coworker. His sister waved from the couch like I was a distant acquaintance. I approached Ethan, stunned. "What is this?" I whispered. He blinked. "It's my birthday party." "No one told me." "Oh," he said casually. "We figured you'd be too tired. You've seemed off lately." I looked around. Photos of Ethan and his family adorned the walls. None of me. Music I didn't choose played over speakers I bought. Strangers sat on furniture I cleaned, drinking from glasses I hand-polished. Then his mother walked over. "Darling," she said with a too-sweet smile, "don't worry about the mess. We'll clean up. You can rest." Rest, as if this wasn't my life, as if I were just a guest. I opened my mouth, closed it, and walked to the kitchen. There, behind the closed pantry door, I let my chest rise and fall in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything, not this time, because I realized something far more terrifying than being unloved. I was being erased. The morning after the party, I found the pantry door ajar and a sticky note on the fridge. It read, "You were quiet last night. Maybe you should talk to someone." It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was Ethan's. The subtlety of it chilled me more than a confrontation ever could. That week, my mother-in-law began making remarks within earshot of guests and neighbors. Olivia has always been a little delicate. Poor thing. The stress of a big house, no children, it takes a toll. Each time her voice dropped just enough to imply concern, but not enough to invite questions. I watched as heads nodded in fake understanding. My sanity wasn't questioned with force. It was dismantled with sympathy. Then came Ethan's intervention. He picked me up from a grocery run with a soft smile and said we had an appointment. "Just routine," he insisted, "a wellness check. You've been tense lately and it worries me." I stared at him, trying to find a trace of irony, a flicker of guilt. There was none. He was calm, practiced. This wasn't the first time he'd rehearsed it. At the clinic, the doctor greeted Ethan by name. I was handed a clipboard, a form already half-filled. The questions were loaded. Do you experience mood swings? Do you feel isolated? Do you hear voices that others don't? I looked at Ethan beside me, who nodded encouragingly. I ticked no all the way down, handed it back, and smiled like a woman who had nothing to hide. They prescribed me medication just in case. A light anti-anxiety dose. Ethan filled it before I could blink. That night, he poured me water, handed me the pill, and watched me swallow. I did. Then flushed the rest down the toilet once he left the room. If they wanted a fragile woman, I would give them a shell, a pliant, docile version of Olivia who needed rest. Because the only way to stay in the war was to convince them I didn't know I was already in one. While they plotted my mental collapse, I quietly rebuilt. First, I found the deed to the house. Buried under wedding cards and old insurance papers, it was clear. The house was purchased with my inheritance from my grandmother, the down payment wired from my account, the deed signed solely under my name. The mortgage, which Ethan proudly claimed we paid together, had been cleared by me during the first year of marriage. Next, I went through bank statements. Every month, a pattern. Ethan transferring small sums to an unfamiliar savings account. Not illegal, but enough to raise flags when pieced together. Receipts missing. Transactions labeled house repairs that never happened. It wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. It was theft dressed in marital normalcy. Then came the blueprint, not a metaphorical one, a literal draft. I stayed up 3 nights designing a new layout of the house, one that stripped away all signs of them. Every family photo, gone. Every room they'd claimed, reimagined. I sketched new walls, open spaces, light, clarity. As I drew, I realized I wasn't redesigning the house. I was reclaiming it. And myself. I needed allies. I called Clara, an old classmate from architecture school turned real estate attorney. She didn't ask questions, just drove over with a briefcase and a voice recorder. Together, we began building a legal firewall. We installed new security cameras, disguised in ordinary places. The bookshelf, the kitchen vent, the garden lamp. Within a week, the footage showed enough. Conversations that sounded like strategy meetings. His mother saying, "She doesn't have the strength to fight. She barely gets out of bed." His sister replying, "Once she's out, we'll redo the interior, make it more ours." One night, Clara helped me plant an audio recorder in the upstairs hallway. It caught Ethan on a call I'll never forget. "No, I don't think she suspects. She's been taking the pills. Yeah, if we can just get her to move out, I can finally put the house on the market." The pause after his words was the longest silence I'd ever felt. That recording changed everything. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. Instead, I made an appointment at the courthouse. The email arrived like a ghost, an automated bank notice from a name I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it, but something about the subject line stopped me. "Quarterly update on your loan account. $247,900 outstanding." My heart stalled. I never took a loan, not since college, and certainly never for that amount. I clicked. It was addressed to Olivia Harris, tied to my social security number, my signature, except I had never signed anything. The loan had been issued 2 years ago through a private lender in Seattle. The funds, it said, were dispersed into a joint account shared with Ethan Harris to be used for a tech startup. The startup had since folded. I scrolled to the bottom, hands shaking, where it said I had 30 days to respond to avoid formal litigation. He'd used my name, my credit, my identity. I dug deeper. Clara helped pull documents from the lender's public records. The application was clean, too clean. Every detail about me matched perfectly, except the signature. It looked like mine, but it wasn't. It was Ethan's mimicry. I'd seen him forge my name once on a birthday card when we ran out of time. He laughed about it. I hadn't. Now I realized he'd been practicing. Clara looked up from the printouts. You could press charges. Forgery, fraud, identity theft. He'd do time. She said it like it was the obvious choice, but I couldn't ignore the other side of it. To the world, I'd be the wife who threw her husband to the wolves, who exposed him for a bad investment made public their private hell. I knew the headlines. Wife destroys husband over failed business, or woman brings down family for profit. It wasn't justice I feared. It was the narrative. So I stayed quiet. For now. Instead of striking, I began to unravel him from within. I suggested a separation. I told Ethan I needed space to find myself again, that I felt lost and broken and didn't want to burden him. His response was swift and strangely rehearsed. "Whatever you need, Liv. We'll figure it out." He smiled, kissed my forehead. He thought I was finally cracking. I played the part perfectly. Meanwhile, I created a fake investment opportunity through an LLC I set up under Clara's guidance. I called it Celerity Capital, complete with a sleek website, LinkedIn presence, and a portfolio of verified angel investors. It specialized in sustainable construction projects, something Ethan had casually mentioned wanting to explore. I sent him the deck as a contact from my therapy group. He lit up at the idea. "This could be my comeback," he said one night, scrolling through the proposal like a man reading scripture. I nodded. "You deserve that." He asked me for help drafting the pitch. I did. He asked to borrow funds to match the required buy-in, $50,000. I wired it in increments, just low enough to avoid suspicion. Each payment was routed through Celerity's account, then documented and stored. I gave him rope. He built his noose. Weeks passed. Ethan bragged to his sister about being back in the game. He told our neighbors he was leading a team of innovators. He bought a new watch, a new tablet, and he smiled more, kissed me more. Then one Thursday morning, a courier arrived with a letter bearing the state court seal. Ethan opened it in the kitchen, his eyes narrowing as he read. "What the hell is this?" I walked in, drying my hands with a dish towel. "Something wrong? It says I'm being sued by Celerity Capital?" He looked up, bewildered. "They're accusing me of misrepresentation." "Oh?" I tilted my head. "Did you misrepresent something?" He dropped the letter. "Did you know about this?" I didn't answer. I reached into the drawer beside the sink and pulled out a second envelope, one he hadn't seen yet. "This one's for me," I said, opening it slowly. "It's from the bank, about a certain loan I apparently took. Did you think that would stay hidden forever?" Ethan's face drained of color. I stepped forward, calm, controlled. "Your accounts have been frozen. Clara filed for discovery last week. Everything you moved, spent, or tried to hide is being traced. He stumbled back like I'd struck him. I followed him to the doorway, letting my voice stay even, steady. This house? I gestured around us. It's mine. Has always been mine. You and your family. Squatters in polite clothing. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. No more performance, Ethan. Curtains down. I opened the front door. You can leave now. The first time I stood on stage again, it wasn't to unveil a design or pitch a renovation. It was to speak. The room was packed. Mostly women, some men, many holding notebooks, recorders, or simply hope. The Women's Rights Conference had invited me after Clara submitted the case summary. They titled the panel Silent Warfare, When Emotional Abuse Wears a Wedding Ring. I had 15 minutes. I used 12. I didn't cry, I didn't accuse. I told a story. How I spent years making a home I wasn't allowed to own emotionally. How I was turned into a shadow in my own mirror. How being gaslit wasn't loud, it was gentle, disguised as concern, wrapped in affection. And how, over time, I stopped trusting my instincts because someone else kept rewriting the script of my reality. Then I played the recording. The room went still. My mother-in-law's voice, smug and unmistakable, echoed across the projector speakers. She's barely hanging on. One more push and she'll check herself into a hospital. Then the house is ours. There was a gasp, sharp and collective. Some people covered their mouths. Others cursed under their breath. I let it play. She's too proud to ask for help. That's her weakness. Let it break her. When it ended, I stepped forward. I am Olivia Harris. I was never broken, just edited. The applause didn't come immediately. It rolled in like thunder, slow and furious, growing until it felt like an avalanche of approval. I didn't smile. Not yet. It wasn't victory. It was acknowledgement. By the end of the day, I had 5 requests for interviews, 3 agents asking for a book deal, and 1 small note slipped under my water glass. It read, "You just gave words to what I've lived in silence. Thank you." I kept that note in my wallet. Within 48 hours, the clip of my speech had gone viral. The blueprint wife, they called me. Headlines danced across morning shows and podcasts. Woman outsmarts gaslighting husband. Domestic coup, how she took back her house. Architecture of survival. The internet, of course, divided itself. Some called me brave. Others called me cold. She set him up. She was never really abused. She planned this like a con. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But consequences didn't care about public opinion. Ethan lost his job 3 days after the clip aired. Not because of the fraud suit yet, but because the company couldn't afford the PR heat. His name had become a hashtag. HR departments don't like hashtags. His mother received a defamation lawsuit from Clara, citing documented false statements meant to undermine my reputation and professional relationships. Her attorney tried to settle out of court. We declined. I didn't want money. I wanted record. The house, once filled with curated silence and secondhand control, became something else. I started stripping the walls. Not just the photos, they were the first to go, but the furniture, the textures, the scent. I repainted every surface, reupholstered every chair, rewired the lighting. I brought in local artists, women who'd been pushed out of their own homes to design pieces, a sculptor whose ex burned her portfolio, a textile artist who'd fled in the middle of the night with only thread and vision. They came together with paintbrushes and hammers, and the house pulsed with new life. I renamed it the Rebuild Room. It was more than a name. It was a promise. We opened to the public on a Sunday. Free entry, no forms, no requirements, just an open door and warm tea. Each room hosted a space. The testimony table where women could leave anonymous stories written on walls. The echo chamber, a soundproof booth to scream, sing, cry, or sit. The workshop wing where vocational counselors offered free career mentoring and resume building. The kitchen served as a communal dining room once a week. No one asked your story, but everyone listened if you chose to tell it. I kept my story in the living room, printed frame by frame like architectural blueprints. Before, during, after. People would walk through slowly, some in silence, some with tears. One woman touched the frame that held my mother-in-law's quote and whispered, "My sister said that to me once." Then she left a note on the wall that said, "I'm not crazy, just cornered." We left it there. Publishers kept calling. I ignored most. But one editor sent a message that caught my attention. "Don't write a memoir, write a manual." So I did. The book was titled, "How to Survive a Clean Domestic Coup, a Blueprint for Emotional Reclamation." I wrote it over nights and early mornings, between hosting workshops and patching holes in drywall. It wasn't about revenge. It was about recovery, about how to see the signs, how to protect your assets, how to listen to yourself when everyone else is trying to rewrite you. The launch was small, intimate, held inside the rebuild room where it belonged. Someone asked me if I forgave them, Ethan, his family. I answered honestly, no, but I released them. The difference mattered. Forgiveness implies they deserve peace. Release means I do. It started with a headline, "Community Fund Under Scrutiny. Rebuild Room Director Faces Embezzlement Inquiry." I stared at the article on my phone, the words flickering under my trembling thumb. A second later, my inbox exploded. Journalists, donors, board members, all wanting answers I didn't have yet. I didn't panic, not at first. I opened the bank app. Our main account looked untouched. But then Clara called, voice sharp with urgency. "There's a new account in your name. Offshore. Singapore. It's listed as a donation funnel for the rebuild room. $83,000 moved last quarter." I blinked. "That's impossible. I never opened." "I know," she said, "but whoever did had access to your ID scans, your signature, even your old university login." That's when it hit me. Zoe. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. Once inseparable in university, late-night study sessions, job interviews, wine over textbooks. But then I got the scholarship. She didn't. It wasn't personal, just merit. Or so I told myself at the time. But I never asked how she took it. I never checked in. I left, and now she was back. Not as a ghost, but a blade. It took Clara 48 hours to confirm it. Zoe had faked credentials, posed as a rebuild room contractor through a shell consulting firm, and rerouted funds from select donors. She kept everything just below audit thresholds, using our own transparency system as camouflage. But that wasn't the worst part. The media received a voice recording the next day, a clip from years ago back in university. My voice. I mean, Zoe's sweet, but I don't think she has the drive. She's good, but not scholarship good. Played alone. The sentence was damning. Zoe had edited the context out, the nervous laughter that followed, the full conversation about how competitive the program was, how hard it was to know who would make it. She'd clipped the self-doubt, the tone, the guilt. Now I was the elitist, the saboteur, the fraud. By noon, the internet was ablaze. Architect of upliftment or master manipulator? Did Olivia build her empire on stolen funds? I held a press conference short and firm, denied the allegations, promised transparency. But no one really listens when the narrative is too good to resist. The rebuild room's doors stayed open, but foot traffic slowed. Donors paused contributions. Volunteers hesitated. One woman returned a copy of my book, left it on the doorstep with a sticky note that read, "We believed in you." Clara worked around the clock to trace the forgeries, but damage control had a clock ticking faster than proof. Meanwhile, financial regulators launched a full inquiry. For legal reasons, our main assets, including the house, were frozen pending investigation. By Thursday, the space I fought for felt like a tomb. I stayed late that night, past the last visitor. No music, no laughter, no movement. Just me and the walls I once tore down and rebuilt. My own footsteps sounded foreign. The gallery frames had been removed for auditing. Even the mural in the echo room had been painted over, neutral gray by some misguided contractor trying to preserve neutrality. I walked into the kitchen and opened the faucet just to hear something alive. The water rushed, pointless, cold. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even curse Zoe. I just sat. For the first time in months, I felt not erased, not broken, just small, human. The house was no longer mine, not in spirit, not in law, not while the system weighed evidence it didn't yet understand, and maybe never would. My phone buzzed. A friend, an old donor. She wanted to know if I was okay. I stared at the screen and typed a single sentence. I'm not sure doing the right thing was worth this. Then deleted it. Because I wasn't ready to admit that out loud. I walked upstairs to the bedroom, now stripped of the linens, the books, the plants. I lay down on the mattress, no sheets, just the frame of comfort. My breath made shallow echoes against the silence. There were no monsters left in the room, just memory, just the weight of good intentions turned into sharpened tools in someone else's hand. Zoe had been waiting. She hadn't struck from impulse. She had studied me, knew my blind spots, trusted my pattern of assuming the best in people, and she'd used the very language of justice to burn the temple down. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared into the dark and wondered who I would be if this was the end. Not the survivor, not the warrior, just the woman who tried too hard to fix what others were committed to breaking. And still, somewhere in the corner of my mind, a small voice whispered, "You're not finished yet." But for now, I stayed still. Because sometimes, even the phoenix has to burn all the way down before it can remember how to rise. The message came at 3:17 a.m., tucked between junk emails and a news alert about a celebrity divorce. No subject line, just a string of numbers as the sender's address. Normally, I would have deleted it. But insomnia teaches you to open anything that breaks the silence. There was no text, only a video file titled Truth to MP4. I clicked. It opened on a split screen, 2 IP addresses, 2 email chains. On the left, Zoe's login, routing donation funds from a false contractor portal. On the right, a deep trace revealing the same funds funneled to her personal crypto wallet. The final frame was a raw webcam capture. Zoe. Her face. Her voice. They won't believe her. She's too self-righteous to defend herself. The video ended. Attached was a simple note. You told me once that I was more than what happened to me. I finally believe it. Now it's your turn. No name. But I recognized the writing. Maya. A quiet girl who came to the rebuild room last winter, barely speaking, always in the corner with her hoodie up and laptop out. She'd asked once nervously if she could help fix our network security just for practice. I said yes. I forgot about it. She didn't. Maya had vanished a few months ago without a word. Now I knew why. She hadn't left. She'd been watching, protecting. By noon, the video was everywhere. Hashtags flipped. BlueprintCon flipped to deem Zoe the forger. Journalists issued apologies, or at least cleverly worded clarifications. Clara filed emergency motions with the financial court, and by sunset, the house was unfrozen. The investigation dropped. Donors returned. Even volunteers sent emails asking when the next workshop would be. I didn't respond. I didn't go on camera. I didn't write a statement. I didn't step outside for the interviews that waited on my porch. Instead, I let silence speak for me. The same silence I'd once been forced into. The same silence I now reclaimed. For a week, I walked the house alone, tore down the press kits, packed away the framed articles, folded the branded T-shirts and workshop brochures. I erased my name from the center of it all, not from shame, but because the center didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to what we'd built, and it was time for it to grow without me. I transferred ownership of the house and all remaining assets to a new nonprofit, Home Again, run by a council of women I'd worked beside these last 2 years. They cried when I told them. I didn't. My tears had dried somewhere between Zoe's betrayal and Maya's redemption. I left them with a note taped to the office door. If I stay, I become the ceiling. If I leave, you become the foundation. And I walked away. 2 months later, I moved to a quiet coastal town 2 states south, bought a small, unfinished cabin on the edge of the sea. No Wi-Fi, no cameras, just wood, salt, and sky. I started teaching a class at the local community center. 3 students at first, now 12. It's called Hands-On Rebuild. No lectures, no theory. Just tools and tired hands rebuilding old porches, kitchen counters, fences fallen from storms. The only rule is you finish what you start, even if you have to tear it down first. Sometimes they ask about the rebuild room. I smile. It was never mine, I say. Just something I helped draw. One evening after class, I sat in my cabin, the windows open, the sound of waves replacing every voice that ever doubted me. I lit a fire, brewed tea, and opened a new notebook, the one I had been avoiding since the day the house was signed away. I wrote the first line in bold ink. This blueprint is not just for houses. It's for souls shattered and rebuilt. Then I turned the page and kept going. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the eucalyptus by the porch. I stepped outside, barefoot, wrapped in a shawl, and looked up at the stars. For the first time in years, I didn't feel watched or judged or expected to be anything. I just felt here and enough.